Well, hey there team, welcome back to the channel, and welcome to the overview. Today we're having a look at Sniper Elite Resistance. Now I've clocked this, I've put in pretty much 12 hours on the nose, but there's a lot of extra sort of, you could call it fluff gameplay with the counter sniper mode. I've tried, propaganda mode. I've sort of picked and poked at the whole thing. But all said, I suppose maybe if you wanted to just mainline the campaign and turn off sniper invasions, which I'll explain all that because I'll treat this as if you don't know anything about Sniper Elite because this is all very new to me as well. You could probably fly through the main campaign in like 6 or 7 hours, something like that. To say that the content here is a little bit thin, especially against a price tag which is very hefty, I think is a reasonable complaint and a big part of why it's getting slammed in reviews at the moment. So while I'm seeding this at 96% as per the thumbnail, but that will dynamically change over time, this is part of the experiment that we're running on the channel. I'm going to review 100 games over the course of the year, and they're all going to basically be ranked from 1 to 100. So while I enjoyed my time with this, I did, in the scheme of things, it's probably at the bottom of the list so far this year, sitting underneath Dynasty Warriors Origins, which, if you want to compare them 1 to 1, I enjoyed that immensely. But the rating system will make a lot more sense as we fill this out with more games as time goes by. So while I'm not disappointed because it's my first Sniper Elite game that I've really kind of gone hard in the paint in, and I enjoyed my time, I really did actually, I can totally understand why essentially the core player base that are hardcore Sniper Elite fans are actually legitimately quite disappointed with this game. It's very much a spin-off from what I understand. It's Sniper Elite 5 Plus. People pointing out that you're better off playing Sniper Elite 5 instead probably have a very valid point. They're pretty much the same price, and this, in many ways, the term asset flip is very accurate because it's all same engine, same assets. I believe they're still working on the actual proper sequel. So, as far as framing goes, recognize that this is sort of a plus version, a DLC standalone in a way. So yeah, as far as value proposition goes, it sounds like getting Sniper Elite 5 would be the much better choice. If you're a fan, you're probably going to get this anyway, but I would probably suggest getting it on sale, on special. However, it bears pointing out that, like I said, I'm not a Sniper Elite player, not really. I've chipped at them over the years. They've never really grabbed me. This one did, I suppose. I will say, sort of at the top level, it's called Resistance. You're a different character. This Harry Hawker, bloody Chav, I suppose, is the Bogan equivalent. Just British as anything, and it grinds on you. Chatty Cathy cuts both ways. It's not just female sidekick protagonists or whatever that yell and scream and talk non-stop. Same thing here, this prick doesn't shut up, and it's particularly grating with his accent. So look, I don't know, I don't even really know who the series main character is, but it's not this dude, and I'll be honest, he sort of wears you down. But it's called Resistance. You sort of work with the Resistance in the background, but again, if this was your first Sniper Elite, I don't know what to expect from a narrative perspective of this series, but the narrative of this is so nothing. There's this thing called Kleiner Bloomer, which is like a super weapon MacGuffin that you're trying to stop, right? And the story, if you can follow it at all, because it is so dry and kind of blandly told, is that you're sort of bunny hopping along trying to find the production facilities and find the trains that they're going to ship them out on, and it is very much carrot on a stick. But as far as any sort of cutscenes or anything that goes, it's all really just dry briefing stuff. There seems to be some side characters. I almost wonder if there's cut content, or maybe these characters feature in the main series proper. But these Resistance characters that probably have about, 3 minutes screen time in the entire game, I'm like, who are you? So look, I know I'm coming out of the gate pretty harsh, but, the narrative's a good cure for insomnia. It'll put you to sleep, that's for sure. But at the same time, I would argue that the core attraction was the gameplay loop, which I really enjoyed. So yeah, story's kind of crap / non-existent, but man, blowing people's heads off and sniping, it didn't really get old, to be honest. So again, maybe you don't know anything about Sniper Elite. Maybe you're like me, a fairly novice at the series, right? Sniping is only part of the package. I kind of expected a bigger focus on it. Essentially, you will have a mission. it plays out as a sort of instanced, not sandbox, but you'll have your mission map area, and they vary in size, but the map can be deceptive because there's some depth to some of them. There's a lot of going into facilities or going up 6 stories on a building, that sort of thing. So there's an elevation component to the game, but you'll have a couple of different objectives spotted around, and they're all pretty much copy-paste of the same idea, find some intel that's in a safe, and within the, let's say, building that the safe inhabits, there'll be a key to unlock it. Now, if you can't find the key, you can just put a satchel on the safe and blow it open, but it makes a lot of noise. So there's still like a sort of mechanical underpinning to these moving parts. Generally speaking, I'd say in each mission, there'll be like an execute side mission, like a red mission. So there'll be an important dude that you can execute. And that's the closest you get to what I thought this game would be, which would be sort of trying to take a long range sniper shot, that sort of focus up. And then there'll be like some side missions, just collect intel item A, collect intel B, that sort of crap. So there's actually, and I guess everyone plays it differently, and that's probably worth even talking about as well. But the sniping component, being a pure sniper, it's kind of tricky in that your gun makes noise. Wouldn't you know it? There's a sound masking mechanic throughout the game, and if you're in certain levels, you'll be lucky. Well, there'll be planes flying over kind of semi-regularly, and a bit like Enemy at the Gates, you will time your shot and to fire it with the noise mask. There's like a little visualization on the screen. But you can also find like these generators, and you can kick them and make them essentially backfire non-stop. And in those moments, that's probably when you'd snipe the most, right? You sit underneath a sound mask and you just pop away, and you take people's heads off from across the map. And the sniping system's really cool. You press space bar to hold your breath, and it will sort of correct and line up, and it will show you where it's going as far as the bullet trajectory and the correction. Now, I think on higher difficulties, you'd probably have to do that manually. I'm not that worried. I just played it on normie mode because I'm a normie. You can zero in your rifle. If your rifle's got different zoom scopes, you can zoom in and out. So, there is a satisfaction to taking those super long range shots. But again, it's kind of rarer. Now, I played fairly stealthy. I lent into this gun, the Well Rod, which is kind of a single action sort of silenced pistol. And moving through the level, what strikes you is how mechanically sound and systems based this game actually is. And I really like games that have pretty robust systems that you can predict, you can work within. Often my favorite are things like, AI economies, where in a way the individuals in the world trade and look after their own interests. While this obviously isn't that, there are still some pretty solid systems that underpin the user experience. And as someone who generally, I don't like a lot of traditional stealth games, and I argue that most often it's because the genre feels unfinished. It'll be, I'm not trying to take huge shots at something like Splinter Cell, it's been a long time, but get in that frame of reference, there'll be a mission. There'll kind of be what I would call developer hidden paths, right? So the line of best fit, or whatever you want to call it, the line through the level, there'll probably be 3 lines that you're supposed to get from A to B that the developers have envisioned, and they've kind of set-pieced a bit with the patrols and the way that dudes move around. And you'll essentially have to intuit the way through that level and kill the right dudes in the right sequence, and it's all kind of on rails a little bit, and if you get it wrong, if you get caught or whatever, often it would be an end game screen. And I'm talking broadly, but this is what you would call a stealth game of yesteryear, and why I'm not really fond of them, because I see them for their mechanics. This sits much more in that sort of pantheon of your Metal Gear Solid Vs, where if you go loud, as it were, there's a robust action end to the gameplay loop, and getting back into stealth as possible. So, and the reason I mention the mechanics is, like, I would call this system very rigid or even strict. Like, as a broad base example, you can't really mantle on everything. A lot of games, that's how it is, not quite Zelda Breath of the Wild, but you could climb up walls and that, like if it was an Assassin's Creed, that sort of thing. And this is really strict, what you can actually interface with, what you can vault over, what you can climb over. And at first it seems like a bit of an embuggerance, but then you sort of start to see it as a puzzle to be solved. And so there's all different paths throughout the level. I suppose same as the stealth theory I was just critical of, but because it's a bit more of an open sandbox, and there's way more different ways to navigate it, it plays out a little bit more like a puzzle to be solved when you realize, hey, I can only really climb up these vines over here, I can only vault over that thing there. It becomes quite strict, which rooftops you can go on, and then you sort of have to peel the onion back and solve it. And look, not nearly as robust as, say, like Hitman, like the new Hitman games. They're way more open, but this feels narrow and intentionally so. And this ties back into the stealth systems like I was talking about. On your map, you can see where the enemies are. They've got like a little white circle. And if you hold down this focus button, left alt or whatever it is on keyboard, you can sort of zero in, and if you're close enough, you can intuit where the dudes are through the walls. You can binocular tag dudes so you can keep track of them. And there's a pretty standardized escalation as well. Like if dudes start to see you, you'll see a white arrow start to fill. If they do see you, they'll go into yellow mode, which is like aggressive investigation. And if that yellow arrow fills, it'll go into red mode, and that will be combat. At which point dudes will peel off, they'll raise alarms, reinforcements will come in. They're very aggressive in their sweeps. So if you do want to stay in stealth, you kind of have to be quite mobile and get away. And I've had some pretty thrilling sort of little moments cat and mousing with them. And the way that I ended up playing, generally speaking, was being very stealthy, very well-rod pistol heavy, and it kind of felt more like a James Bond game or something like that, some sort of close-range pistolier thing. And pretty much systematically killing just about anything in my way, because why wouldn't you? But again, as much as all of those mechanics came together and they work really well, and it's probably because they've had, and you know, this is what, the 6th game in the series? I don't know if they've had any other spin-offs as well. Like, they've spent a lot of time ironing out their system, so it makes sense that it works so well since it's such a popular series. But yeah, like, being less of a sniper game, true, but still being a fun experience, also true. Now look, a big part of the, I suppose, modern version of the Sniper Elite games, I think when I played whatever back in the day, number 3 or something like that, I don't think they had invasions at that point. Invasions are a huge part of it now, and it's a lot of clickbait YouTube content, you know, schooling noobs will invade and wreck their campaign, you know, all this sort of crap in my feed. So the idea is there's this weird asymmetric sniper versus sniper multiplayer mode. It's really cool, actually, and from the perspective of someone playing the campaign, it's actually a pretty cool value add to the point of bloat. Let me just run it through. Essentially, you can queue up and choose to invade as a sniper. Sniper Jaeger, right, like a German. And it has its own RPG unlock system. You get X kills, you unlock more camo and all that sort of stuff. So there's a sort of mini game to be had from invading other players' games. However, as I mentioned before, that sort of sixth sense left alt that you can see through walls, and I don't think it's advertised very well, and a lot of people might be intimidated because of said content online. You can use that to intuit where the enemy sniper is. In fact, at any given time, it will have like a point on your compass, like a little red glow pointing in their direction. I mean, it's pretty helpful, and it's a really big advantage to the invadee, to the single player that's been invaded. And then when they get actually really close, it will glow all around the circle, and you can use that intuition to sort of see them through walls and that sort of stuff, which I think is great, to be perfectly honest. Because, how do I put it, there's probably a certain personality that's attracted to invading other people's games and ruining their fun. And the fact that you can actually sort of bury yourself in a bush, tucked away in a corner, and watch this dude run around like a headless chicken through a wall and choose your moment to blow his head off, oh my god. You will bushwhack so many of these gung-ho dudes that are just trying to run you down and ruin your day. Inversely, I probably played for, let's say, 2 hours as the invading sniper just to see what it's about. And it's actually quite tricky because you obviously don't have that left alt thing. You can sort of just tag friendly units to see if they find enemies moving around, which becomes an interesting rub because by invading other players' games, I got to really see how a lot of players play the game. And absolutely going loud, obliterating everything seems to be a pretty standard approach. And which, while I enjoy the mechanics of this game, and you know, I noted how sound they are, consistent, they work really well, I wouldn't necessarily call this a fantastic shooter. right? If you really want to run and gun and kill everything else, maybe play Doom. But there's an incentive to it as well, because the invading sniper can't really tag friendlies to figure out what you're doing and where you're up to if you kill every single dude on the map. Which, even though I wasn't running gunning so much, I was kind of doing that as well, albeit through a more slow and stealthy, methodical way. So I feel like, just from what I've sampled, that the majority of people play, well, co-op. You see a lot of that, 2 snipers at a time, running around bloody blasting everything. They probably go through the levels twice as fast as I did when I was going slow and steady. So again, even though I predicted the campaign going for like 6 hours or something, I bet you a lot of people go through it quicker, especially if they are allergic to invasions and just turn them off, which I bet a lot of people do as well. The one thing I will say about those invasions, as much as I found them thrilling, and arguably the most memorable moments in a game where the story was just so forgettable or whatever, like the environments are pretty and cool, and I enjoyed all the X-ray vision blowing people's brains out and that sort of stuff, but the actual making memories with this game were some of the cool fights with these sniper invaders. The real problem is that to deal with one of those snipers, because you have to take your moment, your shot, whether it's him thundering into a bush that you're sitting in, and you're worried about the netcode playing up because that seems a bit funny. You can't really risk a single shot well rod. You kind of have to mag dump him with a machine gun, or maybe you have to take the sniper shot across the map, but you won't necessarily have an audio mask because that's the moment that you got to catch this dude. But my point is, as much as even if you're not that good at sniping and shooting, which I am, you can still sort of win these fights pretty consistently if you're clever. The problem is that with each sniper invasion, often that ends with you kind of giving away your position, and all the AI guards go ballistic, and then you find yourself in a sort of heightened fight state. And honestly, it feels overtuned with the sniper invasions, because I'll still be dealing with the fallout of killing the first sniper and the alarms going off and all that, and trying to re-hide when another sniper will invade. And that's the thing that really did give me the shits. I'm happy to fight the sniper on fair game. You've invited my game mid-play, that's fine. But I don't really like the fact that it creates this compounding problem that each time I wipe out a sniper, I'm just aggravating all of the guards on the map, and I have to end up fighting them. And often it will end up in a wipe 5 minutes after I've killed that sniper, because I've had to fight back bloody 20 Gestapo agents. So it's cool, but I feel like it might be overtuned. Anyway, look, they're my thoughts on this game. It's okay. If you happen to be in the unique situation that I'm in, where like I obviously got the game for free, I didn't pay that full price, and if I was really gonna jump into it and give it a go, I'd probably buy Sniper Elite 5, right? I think that's what most people would do. They'd read the reviews, they'd see it's the same price, they'd see every negative review is saying it's just an asset flip, the other one's better value. Sure, absolutely. So if you find yourself in a unique situation where maybe you're watching this video in the future and it's on bloody 50% off or something and you want to give it a go, it is a good time, it's absolutely fun. But just know that compared to its contemporaries in the rest of the series, calling it content thin is probably fair, calling it an asset flip is probably fair, but it still has the core, and I suppose to put a bow on it, it's just more Sniper Elite 5, which, like I said, for most that's a good enough reason to get it, probably not at full price. Anyway team, let me know what you think. Might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.